The 4Rs are the basic principles for pad holding for this level. So they are range, rotation, retraction, and recovery. How this applies is every technique has an optimal range that it should be thrown at for his expression and also for my pad safety. So taking a cross, for example, Tommy's got his stance, he's got his hands up, he's got his chin down. And at this distance, don't move your feet, he's going to throw a cross. And it's probably not going to reach. And again, please. Or he's going to fall over. You're not allowed to move your feet. Go on, get that cross over here. So it's going to change his mechanics. It's more likely to lead to him getting injured by overextension injuries and things like that. And it's just not going to be mechanically correct and not feel good to him because the range was wrong. And the same applies as if I throw the cross from here. It's not going to work because it's the wrong range. So you need to understand that every single technique that you're going to hold for the pads and your partner's going to train has an optimal range that is perfect for it. And your job as a pad holder is to help your partner get into that optimal range, at least at this level. So for example, at cross, I would say don't move your feet. I'd hold the pad up for the cross, make sure I've got good alignment, I'm active, and then Tommy would put a cross at the optimal range for him based on his height and the length of his arms. And you can kind of tell the optimal range because the punch sounds and feels solid. If I hold it here, hit as hard as you can, and don't hurt yourself, hold it here. It's not the same as having the right range. You might need to move the pad a little bit. Accuracy. Yeah. So coach your partner, tell them to be accurate if they're being inaccurate. Keep your eyes on the target. So correct range. So any technique, jabs, crosses, hooks, overhands, kicks, knees, elbows, has an optimal range. You need to encourage and coach your partner to be at the optimal range. Next is rotation. So every punch has a rotational element. Every kick has a rotational element. Every technique has a rotation, usually starting from the floor. Move forward a little bit, please. So it starts from the floor where he drives off his rear foot, rotates his knee into the punch. So he's rotating his foot, rotating his knee, rotating his hip into the punch, rotating his shoulders into the punch. And you get that at the end. So it's a rotation from the floor, expressed out of the hand at the end of the punch. And even the hand rotates at the end of the punch. So, nice punch. So it goes from vertical and it twists over at the end of the punch. So you need to understand that every punch and every kick and every technique has rotation involved in it and how to coach your partner to improve their rotation into the punch. Even things that maybe you don't think have rotation, like a straight knee, for example, he's got his hands up, has a rotation if he drives his hips into the knee and his arms move, so he's rotating his arms and his lead foot can step and turn a little bit. All of these things are rotational elements that add power and the correct technical execution of any strike. So rotation is important in any technique. Then retraction. So using the cross again. When Tommy throws the cross, one of the most important things, especially if your student is going to get into competition, is the returning to a stance because they're protected. Right now Tommy is nice and protected, his hands are up, his chin is down, his face is protected, his body is protected because his elbows are down. If he punches and then lets his arm go back in any direction, or he just doesn't bring it back to his head, he's obviously not protected anymore. So retraction is key. He's got to bring the hand back to his head, and we can check that by making sure that the hand returns from where it started. So retraction is a very key point on any technique. For example, if he does a roundhouse kick, he needs to kick and then retract the leg back to where it started. This is common for beginners. They don't really understand retraction of kicks, so they tend to lose their balance. So everything retracts back to the stance it started with. If you start in this stance, everything should return back to this stance. So that's retraction. And then recovery is if you're committing your body weight to the punch, you don't want to lose your balance. For example, a lot of people when they throw an overhand punch, they throw it so kind of hard that they lose their balance and step forwards, and then they're off position. You see, he had to take 2 steps to recover his balance. So he wants to be able to step, throw the overhand punch and recover back to a balanced, stable stance. So he needs to be able to control his own body weight and recover his balance when he's lost it. This is most easily understood with kicking. So, for example, if Tommy's here and he moved backwards to avoid this kick, if I don't understand recovery, the momentum and the weight of my leg as I kick it throws me off balance, and then I'm out of position, leaves him able to counter. So if he was to move backwards, I should be able to control and retract and recover my leg without losing balance. Even if I expected to hit him but didn't hit him, I still need to be able to get back into stance. So recovery to stance is very, very important because it allows you to set up the next technique in the chain. So the 4 things we're looking at are, first, he starts in a good stance. He's at the correct range to throw the technique that I want him to throw. Perfect range because I felt it and I heard it. So I get that feedback. Accuracy. Good. Rotation. So I can encourage him to rotate different parts of his body. I can say, turn your hips more into the punch. Good. Now rotate your shoulders as well. And the punch got harder. You could probably hear it, and I felt it through my nice AirPads. Retraction, he's got to get the hand back in order to be protected. So I can check that, and for beginners I wouldn't do it too fast, but I just make sure that the hand returns. Because I don't want to do this with a beginner, because it's intimidating. They hit and then they're getting hit back, it can overwhelm them, so just feedback nice and slow. And then recovery to a balanced stance. So Tommy should be able to move in any direction afterwards. He should be able to throw any technique that he likes afterwards without having to reset his balance. So those are the 4 R's, are very key to everything that you do when holding the pads. Always look at your partner's range, always look at their rotation into the strike, look at their retraction of the tool that they've thrown out, and look at recovery to stance.